Hello there. What is going on, everyone? Today we're going to be doing a ship breakdown for Star Wars Armada. We're going to be talking about the Nebulon. You have seen it, I'm sure. It's probably one of the first ships from Star Wars Armada that Rebel players have ever gotten their hands on. Very, very iconic ship, and we're going to be breaking this ship down. We're going to be looking at the ship cards, the differences between the two varieties, titles, and how it works, and some sample builds as well. So if you guys are either new to Star Wars Armada or just looking to maybe get a fresh look at the Nebulon, it certainly has changed over the years, and there's a lot of new options available to it, and it's actually one of my favorite ships because I think it's seen largely as a moderate to low effective ship, but I think it can be employed to very, very high effectiveness, and I want to talk about some ways that I think we can do that. So if you guys are new here to the channel, I do talk a lot about Star Wars Armada as well as other Star Wars and tabletop games, things like Star Wars X-Wing and Star Wars Legion as well. So if you're interested in any of that, you are in the right place. We are also giving away a lightsaber right now. So all you have to do is be a subscriber and leave a comment on this or one of my videos to automatically enter to win that. That's going to be running all throughout the end of the month as well, so you have plenty of time. Also, I'd encourage you to check out our Discord. We have a great family-friendly gaming Discord. You can jump in there. There's links in the description below so you can learn more. Great place to ask questions, become part of the community, share fleet ideas, learn more, and join in that friendly community. So with all that being said, let's go ahead and dive into the Nebulon for Star Wars Armada. This is a small ship, but it's a 2-command ship, which is kind of like a small to medium size. You know, the 2-command ships tend to be a little bit beefier, a little bit more survivable than the 1-command really small ships. It does have 5 hull, and it has a brace token, actually 2 brace tokens, so it gives a double survivability. And now small ships generally don't tend to often have brace tokens, but a second brace token available here means that even a single accuracy when attacking the ship will not be enough to knock out that brace. So it is a great way to cut damage in half. So that's very nice. It also has the evade token, which is something that has gotten better over the years, especially with the 1.5 rule set. Evade now can be discarded when it is used. It can also be spent at close range. If you discard it against a larger ship, it's going to actually affect 1 additional die. So really, really nice with the evade and the brace. A lot of damage cancellation. What it lacks, however, is the redirect token. And that is especially important if you are attacked on the side. Its strongest hull zone is definitely the front, with the 3 shields in the front and the 3 red dice in the front. This is a ship that wants to be pointed at the enemy and hopefully at long range. It's most defensible when at long range, and it is most offensible. Is that even a word, offensible? It has this best offense also while at long range, where its shields are a little bit weaker on the sides, as well as its firepower, having only 1 red and 1 blue on the sides. 2 red in the back is fairly well, although you generally don't need to fire out of the rear very much. However, that does factor in well when you think about things like salvo, although this is a ship that usually, since it doesn't natively have a salvo, as do most of the Rebel and Imperial ships not have a salvo, but it can potentially be given one, so that does make it a possible contender for one of the upgrades that can grant you a salvo token. Now, both versions of this ship just have a turbo laser, an officer, and a support team, so this is generally seen as a kind of a bare bones ship or a cheaper ship that you don't tend to include too much on, and it's pretty maneuverable too. You know, it's got a strange kind of maneuverability to it because of it being a speed 3 ship that can turn pretty well. A lot of times you don't necessarily want to go that fast with this ship because it's best, like I said, at long range. So while it can go speed 3, I think most of the time it sticks to speeds 1 and 2. Only using speed 3 if it needs to usually run away or overcorrect for maybe a bad deployment. If you happen to put one in a place where it's not going to be able to contribute to the battle, a lot of times it'll speed up to kind of get back in the fight. But I find from most of my experiences, this ship serves best often at speed 1. While rarely going, to its speed 3 size. Now, as far as arcs, I did talk about how this ship wants to be pointed right at the enemy. It's a little bit more difficult to do that because it has very narrow front and rear arcs. Its side arcs are its weak spot, and they're big weak spots. And that's one of the things that lead to this being a ship that a lot of Rebel players choose to avoid because it is so easily killed. especially if your opponent can get a really nasty shot, into the side. And it's not that hard to position yourself to get that side arc shot, especially when you get close up. It's a little bit more defensible. It's a little harder to navigate when somebody's really that far away from you. And of course, you will have the double brace and the evade. But having only one shield, even though this stock footage image that I'm using here has a 2 set for the shields, granted there are ways to do that. We're going to talk about that in a little bit more. But yeah, when this ship first came out, everybody said, well, it's a great ship, except for it doesn't have redirect. So if you get shot on the side, you can't do anything about it. And that's really the biggest weakness of the Nebulon. Of course, it kind of makes up for that with the double brace, and it makes up for that a little bit in its relatively cheap point cost. However, a lot of people don't like having a weak point that is that exposable and it makes a ship that potentially vulnerable. And so I think that's fair criticism. Now, let's talk about the 2 different versions of the Nebulon-B support refit. Well, the first one is the support refit. This is generally the bare bones Nebulon. This is kind of as basic as it gets. It's only 51 points, which is an extremely fair cost. As a matter of fact, for what this ship offers, you could fit a lot of these on the board at once. You could make a big Nebulon fleet if you really wanted to. In a 400-point fleet, a 51-point ship can really spare you a lot of points. And with only 3 upgrade slots too, it's able to do much of what it does without a whole lot of extra help. It does have command 2, only 1 squadron command, 3 engineering, which is all right. It's kind of basic, not the greatest stat line for that. 1 blue anti-squadron die, which is just kind of basic. We have the 3 red in the front, which is kind of where this one wants to live. It wants to live with its front arc pointing straight at the enemy. Now, moving on to the Escort frigate, which is a slightly more expensive version at 57 points. This one actually has no drawback other than the additional cost. This version is completely superior to the other version in that it gains +1 squadron value, allowing it to be a moderate level carrier, which is certainly nice in the game of Star Wars Armada. Most games tend to involve squadrons, and you need squadron value on your ships to be able to push and activate those squadrons. But it also has an additional anti-squadron value up here with the 2 blue dice in its anti-squadron armament. This is especially nice because not a whole lot of small ships have multiple squadron dice, and not that many ships have 2 blue squadron dice on top of that. So it makes for a very, very nice anti-squadron presence. We sometimes refer to those attacks as flak attacks, but this one does a pretty good job at really starting to take some concentrated shots at enemy squadrons that are within close or medium range, and being able to whittle them down to help your fighters finish them off. This one is also used a lot more often to push fighters and to be sort of a kind of a hybrid level ship that is mediocre at a lot of different things while still having that critical weak side arc. There are 4 titles available to this ship: the Vanguard, the Yavaris, the Salvation, and the Redemption. You're going to be, old school players of Armada will be familiar with just these 3 here on the right, whereas the Vanguard is a newer title that was added more recently, and all of these are available in the upgrade card collection, so you can get the updated and errated version of all of them, because some of these, notably the Yavaris, have been changed. So I'm going to be talking about the current version of this, because Yavaris used to be one of the most overpowered titles in the game, and now it has been changed to be a little bit more balanced. But let's talk about the Vanguard first. This is the most recent title. It was added to the Nebulon in a way as kind of a type of a correction to the Nebulon to allow it to make up for some crucial deficiencies or weaknesses. One of the things it does for only 4 points, it's going to give you the weapons team icon in your upgrade bar, which is okay. It's not necessarily what the first on the list of things that I really wanted for this ship, but that is, of course, one possible way to get a salvo token by using the weapons team option. But it also says at the start of the first round, you may replace one of your defense tokens with a redirect defense token. And of course, that is great, except it means you have to replace. And so, now you're thinking to yourself, well, double brace is really good. If I had double brace and a redirect, that'd be great. But then again, evade just got bumped up to be really, really effective. And so it's now becomes like, I wish it just added a redirect token as opposed to having you replace one. But of course, that's the price of doing business with the Vanguard title. It's only 4 points, and it allows a lot of different build options. And we're gonna do some build options after this. Next up, the Yavaris at only 5 points. This one used to just let squadrons fire 2 whole times, which was amazing, especially when it came to critical effects, because it used to be a multiplier. But right now, in the 1.5 errata, what Yavaris says is each squadron you activate may choose to only attack during its activation. If it does, while attacking, it may add 1 die to its attack pool of a color already in its attack pool. So what this is just basically doing is it's still, for a lot of ships, it's kind of doing some of the same thing. It's just giving you an extra die if it only attacks and does not move. So this is great if your squadrons are already in position. However, it does not letting them attack a whole second time. So for like your Luke Skywalker X-Wings that want to have that critical effect trigger 2 times during their activation, or any of your other special magical crits that could now potentially, or any kind of when you attack, do this, and now it's treated as a whole second attack, that's not going to work anymore, but it still gives you an extra die. So I think it's still a very good title, especially for a character, for squadrons that want to have critical effects, especially for the Squadron 2 value version. It's just a very nice way to get an extra die onto a bomber. Now, it makes B-Wings a little bit less deadly than they used to be, because B-Wings already had 2 dice, a black and a blue, with you had Bomber Command Center in there. You get your rerolls. They were very, very deadly, because now you would go from 2 dice to 4 dice, and then critting twice, potentially. Whereas now a B-Wing would only go from 2 dice to 3 dice, whereas a lot of single die bombers remain largely unaffected, with the exception of special critical mechanics. But it's still giving you an extra die to all those squadrons that are already in position, which is very, very nice. The Salvation, the 7-point title. This is such a cool title, and I really, really like it. It says, while attacking a ship from your front hull zone, your critical icons count as 2 damage instead of 1. This was one of the first ships a lot of people used, or first titles a lot of people used when they were playing their demo games in the first wave of Star Wars Armada. And this is definitely a fun one to run. I especially enjoy this title with the Commander Sato, which can potentially let you get black dice in the front arc, which is always really, really groovy, because now you have the rare potential of being able to get 3 damage on a single die out of the front arc, which is just incredible. But Salvation is also interesting if you consider maybe putting a gate as your commander and just adding a salvo to it. Now, you could get a salvo with the Vanguard title, but then you're not going to have Salvation. And the cool thing about, like, if you put a gate on the Salvation is you could potentially then salvo out of your front arc. If somebody attacks your front arc, you can tap the salvo, and then you get to use your 2 red, which is kind of cool. And then all of a sudden, now you can potentially salvo with that. Now, because granted, you can't add dice to a salvo attack, but if that salvo attack originates from your front arc, then you could potentially trigger Salvation's ability again on a salvo. Now, granted, I don't think you'd necessarily want to do a gate on the Salvation, especially for just a salvo, but it's a cool idea, and maybe it'd be a fun thing to do. If you're just trying to see what new things you can come up with, that's like a cool little thing to consider trying. But Salvation is a cool title. It's very expensive, though, for a very narrow shot that's sometimes difficult to line up. So if you're going to run something like that with Salvation, you need to add some extra things to it to kind of help increase your chances of getting the red crit. And so, because on its own, most times when I have tried to run Salvation, I end up rolling red blanks, red accuracies, or red single hits, or red double hits. Like, I very, very rarely roll red crits when running Salvation. So you need a little help there. Redemption, 8-point title. When the game was new, this was one of the least taken titles, but now it's one of my favorites, and a lot of that has to do with some of the other upgrades that we've seen come out, especially the auxiliary shields team, which it really helps the survivability of the Nebulons, and we're going to see a build that uses that here shortly. But for 8 points, this says, when a friendly ship at distance 1 through 5 resolves an engineering command, it gains 1 additional engineering point. This is fantastic for one additional reason beyond just the simple, hey, this is giving out extra engineering points. It's also for yourself, because it doesn't say when another friendly ship or when other friendly ships. It says when a friendly ship. You are always friendly to yourself. So as long as it doesn't say another friendly ship, it also works for yourself. So this effectively also raises Redemption's engineering value from 3 to 4. Well, from a certain point of view, not exactly, because a token's still, it's not gonna a token won't, will still reference the number 3. However, if you only use a token, you're still resolving that command and will still get +1. But if you do an engineering command and the token, you're still only getting +1. So that's kind of how that works. But it's a really nice way to change all your other Nebulons to 4 engineering, especially if they're starting with the auxiliary shields team, which can potentially buff up your sides and kind of make up for that weakness by using the support team on them. And so I really, really like Redemption. And if you're not clear about auxiliary shield team, we'll talk about that here in a second, because I want to go show you guys a couple of builds using some of these titles. First, I want to start off with the Salvation. For me, it kind of is the quintessential build for a Nebulon, in that it wants to point towards the enemies. Now, I don't usually, a lot of times when I'm doing these builds, I'll start off with like a generic build or two, like without any titles, but I'm not doing that here because I don't generally run Nebulons without a title. And I don't see a whole lot of people that just run like naked Nebulons or any Nebulon that doesn't have a title. Because Nebulon doesn't do anything spectacularly good, it just kind of does things at a moderate level, but everything that it can do, the titles help it do. So if you're trying to be a carrier, there's a great carrier title. If you're trying to be a gunship, there's a great gunship title. If you're trying to be support, the Redemption's a great support title. And if you're trying to be weird, well, then, I guess you have the Vanguard title if you're trying to be weird. But just about anything that you want to do with this ship, there's a title that helps you do it better. So the only time I would ever see somebody taking more than like an unnamed Nebulon is if you wanted to run 5 or more, because then there simply wouldn't be enough titles left. So with the first option here, although this might be a decent option if you ran out of titles, you could put maybe an enhanced armament or a spinal armament on it. But Salvation is, again, our front shooter. I ran this on a support refit, since this one doesn't need any of the stuff that our Escort version has. So the support refit, we just want to save points in this case. Salvation, of course, favors the front arc. Spinal Armament favors the front arc. It increases by 1 red die. It also does allow me to take a second shot, because the front arc is narrow. There are many times where I'm going to have a side arc shot. If I can line up the front arc at all, there's probably like a 80% chance that I'm going to have double arc on them, and I would rather have a second shot also, as opposed to a different upgrade that might say you can only attack once per turn. There are cheaper ways, than Spinal Armament to get out there. There definitely are, but I prefer Spinal. Also, there, in the event that you do have to take that rear shot, now you have a 3-die shot out the rear, which is really cool. There have been times where that has absolutely happened. I know some people prefer slaved turrets, but then I'm like, and you're restricting yourself to only 1 shot. And I don't know if it's worth it for only 3 points, but if it comes down to a 3-point difference, then that is certainly an option with Salvation. A lot of people will run slaved turrets with Salvation. I can't fault you on that, but I'd rather run Spinal Armament, and especially if you're going to try making this your flagship and putting a gate on here, so you can also salvo. You definitely don't want slaved turrets, because then you wouldn't be able to salvo. So again, I like Spinal Armaments on this one, but slaved turrets is a cheaper option. From a certain point of view also, I guess you could go with quad battery turrets as well, because a blue die is a little more likely to get you a critical. It's an option. Consider quad battery turrets with Salvation as well. It's kind of cool. Auxiliary Shields team. This one is amazing. It's going to help you, especially if you have a Redemption in your build. But basically, you can treat your maximum left and right values as increased by 1 when you do an engineering command. But you can't raise them higher than 4. You can only raise them 1 higher than they normally are. And so basically what this can do is, if you do an engineering on the first turn of the game, you can get those left and right shields up to 2. If you don't have Redemption and your engineering value is only 3, you'll have to spend 2 points to raise your left shield, then maybe transfer 1 from the rear to the right. And that's cool. And then maybe another engineering like later on to kind of either take a token or refill that right one. But I like this a lot, because if you're not running, any kind of fixes to the ship to get a redirect token, well, now you need it a little bit less, because now you have 2 shields on the side. So you're a 3-2-2-2, right? And so that's a little bit more forgivable, because then you can always do an engineering later on, and then move your shields around a little bit. And it allows you to really take advantage of having the 2 braces and the evade. A lot of attacks won't get through a 2 shield. Like that long range attack, a lot of long range attacks won't get through a double shielded side after you cancel 1 or maybe 2 dice and then brace the rest. It definitely won't, you're definitely way less likely to be one-shotted now as well. And so that's a really cool thing, especially if you're dialing a couple of engineering commands. Now, granted, Salvation usually wants concentrate fire, so make sure you aim appropriately, and hopefully you don't need to take advantage of those side shields, but they're there if you need them. And then Ramus Antilles is going to be nice for Salvation. Again, I said we would need help trying to manufacture those crits, and he's a way to do that. He's a way to make sure that if we do that that amazing and nice concentrate fire command, we can get a token, so we can also re-roll. So and the red dice tend to have some blanks, so we want to try and get re-rolls if we can. Ramus is also going to allow us to get an engineering. If we do engineering first turn, we don't necessarily have to have redemption in our list. So Ramus, it kind of pulls double duty on this particular build. Of course, it does increase the costs of this one a little bit. And again, Salvation would also, if you're not running a gate, this would work really, really well in a Sado build because you can get those black dice at long range. A good redemption option if you're wanting to go with a little bit more support. The idea here is running redemption. First off, that's automatically great support. We've got projection experts on here, which is going to let you do some engineering, send some shields over. So this is, I think, better placed on a ship that's going to be a little bit in the rear. Granted, Auxiliary Shields team naturally works really well with redemption also, but if you want to go pure support, then you don't expect to be fired upon, or if you're going to fly yourself on the outskirts of the fleet, where you'll have obstructed shots to you, and maybe your flagship is a much higher value target. Projection experts is another option. You're gonna have 4 engineering points, so you can send 2 shields over and then regenerate 1 naturally with that, and so that's gonna be something you can just do a lot. Just keep throwing shields over there. Plus, you're feeding their engineering commands. So really, like if you got an MC-80 already, that's gonna be hard to kill. I think it'd be nice for like a Liberty, supporting a Liberty or something like that. That's got some weak spots also, and they sometimes need extra support. And that's pretty groovy. And then this also is making use of the double blue for anti-squadron. You have heavy fire zone, which is an amazing upgrade on a Nebulon. Nebulon's not the most offensive platform, and while it does have a turbo laser slot, its turbo laser slot can't usually combo with too many other things. And so the turbo laser slot's kind of limited in how you can really maximize its efficiency. Well, it makes for a perfect place for a card like Heavy Fire Zones, which is going to take those 2 blue and basically turn them into 2 red when you're doing an anti-squadron attack. And so basically, before you gather dice, you can gather red dice instead, then measure range, and you're like, oh, I've got these guys at long range, let's gather red dice, boom, and then you can really make some extend your reach. And that can be a fun thing, especially on a ship that may not be focused on doing anti-ship firepower, or just at least wants the option to go after squadrons. And it's only 4 points, so even if you go up against a list that has very few or is even squadronless, you've only wasted 4 points as opposed to kind of building a whole ship towards an empty purpose. And if you do get some squadrons that you're going to be shooting at, you also have General Draven here, which is going to give you bonus dice against counter and intel, which again, if you have the longest range possible, then you're maximizing your options of being able to use General Draven a lot more frequently. So I think that's a pretty cool combo with Draven and Heavy Fire Zone. And on any escort frigate that could work, but might as well put it on redemption if he's going to be support and really not focused on killing other ships. Maybe he can kill squadrons pretty well. So next up we have a Vanguard Fleet. This one's going to be a little different because I am using Gunnery Team with the new added Weapons Team. So, Vanguard's going to give you a redirect, make you a little bit more well-rounded. But if you're going to be well-rounded on defense, I want to be well-rounded on offense also. So I gave it Enhanced Armament. This is going to increase my red battery armament on the left and right side by 1 red die. So now I'll actually have 3 red in the front, 2 red and a blue on the side. So still 3 and 3. Makes me a little bit more well-rounded. And then, two red on the back. And the reason I went with this particular setup is it's something that I first used in the joke that I have running about running Akbar Nebulons, which it starts out as a joke because Nebulons are weaker on the sides, but if you're able to enhance the sides, especially with things like Enhanced Armament and Akbar's 2 extra red dice, you can really get a consistent and decent shots out of this thing. And so if we add gunnery teams to that, all of a sudden we've got the widest side arc in the game, which is Akbar's dream. And if you can get 2 shots out of it, that works out great too. So it is worth considering if you're trying an Akbar fleet and you have enough points for a Vanguard Nebulon, it's something worth considering. But it's also good for ships where you just want to make sure you have a double arc. You know, if you got something like Sado or Dodana and you want to get as many shots as you can to trigger your commander's ability, then gunnery team, most of the time you're going to have a double side arc. You're going to have multiple ships in a side arc, especially if you're trying to, because this is one of the widest side arcs in the game. It's very, very easy to have side arc. It's a lot harder to have front arc. So this is a way to maximize your side arc. And if you do have front arc, you probably also have a side arc. So then you can opt not to, do, both out of the side. You can, you have some options. And if you happen to have double front arc, well, that works too. You're very rarely going to have double front arc. But when you do, that's a cool thing too. But enhanced armament's going to enhance. You're more likely, if you're only going to get 1 red die, and if it's a ship, in a fleet that wants to maximize the number of attacks and also not suffer from, oh, your shot was obstructed, you get no attack at all, enhanced armament's the way to go for something like that, because this way you at least have 2 reds. So even if you have to lose 1, you're still getting that, you're still getting the single red plus any concentrate fire bonuses or Akbar bonuses and things like that. Medical team is just a cheap upgrade to go if you're trying to save points. Again, it can help you save a damage card. An expert shield text I think is a given option for Vanguard, because you're gonna have a redirect, and then what happens when my shields are all gone? Well, I can still spend that redirect to soak up a damage, and so that's a pretty cool option. And it'll start off with one of the classic builds. I think Yavaris is a classic build. It still is going to function in many ways like it used to, with it being a carrier of course, an escort frigate. I really like Flight Commander and Fighter Coordination Team. This has always been a really fun combo for me. Fighter Coordination Team. It doesn't work. It's there when you have a lot of squadrons. It's there when you have an awful lot of squadrons and you want to just help keep pushing them for slower squadrons. Flight Commander is just great because it says you can do your squadron command after you move. So even if you're not taking Fighter Coordination Team, like a lot of times a Yavaris might not take Fighter Coordination Team. A lot of times Yavaris might want to take Auxiliary Shields Team to give it extra survivability so it can push squadrons longer. That's also viable. Linked Turbo Laser Towers. It's just great for a number of different things. A lot of times on Yavaris, I will also run Heavy Fire Zone instead of this, but Linked Turbo Laser Towers works great on this ship altogether. If you do decide to go after squadrons too, you can just be like, boom, you can do a really big squadron attack against at least one, if you got one pesky ace that's bothering you too. But I really like Flight Commander here as if I took nothing else, it'd be Yavaris and Flight Commander, because I want to keep this ship safe. It does have it is potentially weaker. It's one of those carriers that if they can get, shots on your side, they're going to take you down in a round or 2 usually. So Flight Commander allows me to stay at longer range. Again, we don't have offensive retrofit on this ship, so how can I try to make sure that I can still hit squadrons at longer range? Well, the answer is simple. Stay far away and then slowly move in, but do your squadron command after you've moved. You'll be able to make a more informed move on, hey, I want to move here, but will I be in range of squadrons if I do? I think if I turn this way, I should. You can take advantage of that additional speed on this thing and its fairly flexible amount of yaw, and then put yourself in a position that you can hit the squadrons that you want to hit while hopefully still being far enough away from enemy fire. Flight Commander really does that for the Yavaris. It gives you the flexibility you need. And of course, you still have the option of doing your command now. So if you're flying maybe away or outside of an arc, you can hit the squadrons before you fly to safety as well. Usually that's something you're considering more on the 5th or 6th turn of the game as opposed to like the 2nd or 3rd. So Flight Commander lets you stay very flexible on a great carrier that is a little bit fragile. All right, guys, that's going to do it for the Nebulon breakdown. Let me know your comments, questions, anything I missed, any of your favorite builds down in the comment section below. Don't forget to enter to win that lightsaber giveaway. Join the Discord. Let's keep the discussion going. I'd love to have you guys over in our Discord. It's family friendly. We got giveaways that happen there all the time. It's a fun one. We're getting really, really close to pushing through new thresholds, and there'll be more giveaways. So Discord's a fun place to be, to stay connected with the community. I will talk to you guys later. I want to thank you all so much for watching, and as always, big thanks to my patrons. You guys are absolutely amazing and help make this channel possible. May the force be with you, and always remember to wear your shoes when it's outside and it's cold, because you don't want to be barefoot in the snow.